In 1913, the Ottoman Empire came to be ruled by Talat and Vir Cemal Pasha. Under their leadership, a national movement was orchestrated to unify the Turkic people in the region and ultimately remove all non-Muslims from the land. The presence of the Armenian people, as well as other Christian minorities, was not conducive to this new Turkish ideology, and thus the Armenians were subjected to systematic decapitalization, deportation, and ultimate extermination. Over 100 years have passed since the events that marked the start of the Armenian Genocide. From 1915 into the early 1920s, over 1.5 million Armenians lost their lives at the hands of the Ottoman Turkish government. Over 1.5 million lives cut prematurely, over 1.5 million stories were never told. But I'm here today to tell one story of an Armenian genocide survivor, my great-grandmother, Anna Tuntunjan. Anna's story begins in Sivas, Turkey, where she was born in 1903. She was 11 years old in the summer of 1915 when Ottoman Turkish officials came into town and rounded up all of the Armenians. The men and young boys were soon separated from the group, and Anna watched as her father, uncles, and beloved cousins were shot to death. Shortly after the men were removed and killed, the infant babies were taken from their mothers, including Anna's baby brother. These babies were then buried in the ground only up to their shoulders, and Anna watched as horses trampled over them. All that remained at the end of the day were the women, the young girls, and the elderly, but fate wouldn't spare them much longer. Soon after, the officials came back and they ordered all of the Armenian women and all who remained that they needed to evacuate their homes. Anna remembers helping her mother tie whatever belongings they could into sheets and sew their belongings into sheets. And very soon, the women, including Anna, her mother, and her sisters, began a march, a death march ultimately through Turkey into and through the Syrian desert. On this march, they had no food other than whatever they had carried from home, and as you could imagine, it didn't last very long. They walked all day and only stopped at night, and water was scarce. Anna says that whenever they saw a spring or a well, they would try to go to it and fill their jugs, but that's only if they were able to get away from the caravan without being noticed. Anna says she was with hundreds of women, children alike, and she remembers it took about 2 or 3 days before the first of these women began to drop out of formation. Early one morning, before the march began again, Anna and her sisters were at a well filling their water jug, and while at the well, a man grabbed her. Anna screamed and kicked and cried out, and her sisters ran back to go get their mother, but by the time their mother returned, by the time the sisters returned, Anna had been taken. Anna does not know where her abductor took her, but at 11 years old, he chose her to be his new wife. He already had a wife, though, many in fact, and she became one of about 15 or 20 other young Armenian girls just like herself in his harem. Anna says that he would pretty much leave her alone, but that he also called her his pretty one. Within the year, Anna had given birth to a daughter. And by the time Anna was 13 years old, she had given birth to another. Although she loved her children, day after day she thought only about running away. She missed her mother and her sisters and wanted more than anything to leave this man. The problem was she was never alone. There was never a window of opportunity for her to do anything by herself, let alone escape. The girls always had to accompany each other no matter where they went. or what they did. And if a girl stepped out of line or tried to do anything on her own, the girls would squeal on one another in hopes of being rewarded by their captor. One night, the girl who was supposed to accompany Anna to the outhouse was too tired to do so. And she let Anna go alone, figuring probably that Anna has 2 daughters. She's going to go do her business and come back. But Anna took that as an opportunity to escape. And she did. She ran and managed to escape, although alone. She ran through the night and eventually made her way to an Armenian church. However, the church couldn't help her, and she ended up running away from them as well. She's still only 13 years old. She found an Armenian priest who took her in, and he gave her refuge, and he ultimately helped her to get to Aleppo, Syria, which at the time was becoming a makeshift resettlement community for all of the Armenians who were surviving the death marches through the desert. Anna lived in an orphanage for years. She worked with other survivors, other girls her age, working and weaving rugs. And every Armenian she met, she'd ask, do you know my family? Do you know my mother? Have you heard what happened to them? And one day, her question was answered. Yes, I know your mother, I know your sisters, they're alive, they've survived, they're living in Marseille, France. With the help of the AGBU, the Armenian General Benevolent Union, an Armenian humanitarian organization still very active today, Anna was able to go to France and was finally reunited with her mother. At this point, she was in her early 20s. This reunion, however, was short-lived, because unbeknown to Anna, halfway around the world in America, her future husband was making his way to France. Now, by 1925, my great-grandfather, Kevork Malyan, had been living in America for over 20 years. He was married and had 2 daughters of his own. One of them was a newborn, and his wife was having a hard time producing milk for the newborn and was given the advice that she should ice her chest. This, however, caused her to get pneumonia, and she died, leaving Kevork alone to care for his 2 girls. And he was able to get by for a while with the help of some relatives, but after some time, these relatives were saying, this is too much for us. You need to remarry, you need to find a wife and someone to take care of your girls. He was told that there was a large Armenian community living in Marseille, and he should go there, find a wife, bring one home. So he did. In 1925, my great-grandfather went to Marseille. He went to the rug factory where Anna was working and admired her. He then found her mother, told her of his intentions, and by the time Anna came home from work that night, the arrangements were all made. Kevork and Anna were married the next day, and shortly after their little wedding ceremony, they boarded a ship and came to America. Kevork and Anna went on to have 3 more children. Their first, born in 1927, is my grandmother. Growing up, my grandmother knew that her mother was an Armenian genocide survivor. However, the genocide was never spoken about except in very generalized terms, like the horrors we Armenians saw or the crimes the Ottoman Turks did to us. After Kevork's passing in 1962, Anna started receiving letters from relatives in Turkey. When my grandmother questioned her about these letters, she would say that they were from sisters of hers. But these were sisters that Anna had never previously spoken about. These were sisters that, growing up, my grandmother never even knew existed. And in the beginning of the summer of 1964, Anna announced that she was going to go visit them. This caused my grandmother great stress because Anna had never traveled anywhere alone in her adult life, let alone to another country, and she hadn't been to Turkey since she was an 11-year-old child. But Anna was a stubborn woman, and she persisted, and in the beginning of the summer of 1964, she went back to Turkey. When she returned at the end of the summer of 1964, she sat my grandmother down and admitted to her that the sister she had gone to visit, the relatives she had gone to visit, the women she was calling her sisters, weren't actually her sisters, but they were her two daughters, the two daughters she had abandoned when she was 13 years old. In the letters of correspondence she had been sending back and forth to Turkey, she found out that her abductor had died. And so for the first time in nearly 50 years, she felt it was safe to go back and to go find these girls, who of course themselves were women at the time. It took Anna 50 years to speak the truth of what she witnessed with the massacres and with her experience of being abducted and the rape. And while I chose to tell Anna's story, I could just as well have told any of my great-grandparents' story, all of whom survived the genocide, all of whom experienced equally incomprehensible hardships. I am here today because of the strength that they had, and I see that strength continue to be embodied every day in my parents and in my grandparents. I say that I'm an Armenian American, a third-generation Armenian American, but it might be more fitting to say that I am a third-generation Armenian Genocide survivor, because I am the great-grandchild of men and women who never even had an opportunity to dream that I would exist. So I like to think it's my duty and my obligation to tell their story and to keep the history of all of those who came before me alive. Thank you.